Hello everyone! Today is the first time of Rola Diplomacia that we are presenting in English. My name is André Tavares, the host and the host of the show. And in the same table, I have my beautiful colleagues Bruno Ribeiro. On the other side of the table, Joaquim Martins.
Hello everyone.
And right next, in front of me, I have the honorable guest, Jim McClure from Third Act Publishing.
Hello everyone, how we doing?
Awesome, man, awesome. We are doing very well. Hopefully you guys on your houses are comfy and ready to hear and see what today we'll be talking about. But first things first, we have to talk about and present our beautiful sponsor, role-playing and board game shop, Voodoo Plays. You can get your favorite role-playing game at voodooplays.com or even your board game. You have a lot to choose from. You have a really beautiful palette of role-playing games from Polaris, Star Trek, Deadlands, and a lot of Dungeons and Dragons products as well, Star Wars, and a lot of things that you can grab on the store with a very reasonable price and with a discount of Roll Initiative. You just need to type it on the discount coupon. Thank you. And then you have a beautiful discount for your purchase. Also, if you don't find the role-playing game you are looking for, you can contact Voodoo Plays. They will try to get it, and if they aren't able to get that role-playing, they redirect you to the best shop who has that. It's quite beautiful. Once I tried to buy, I don't remember, I think it was a quite Apocalypse game, yeah. And Voodoo Plays did not have it, and so they redirect me to the store that had the most reasonable price for it, and it's quite an awesome customer service. So make sure to talk with them, and hopefully you'll find your game. Also, we have our beautiful and humble Patreon. You can find our Patreon at www.patreon.com/rollinitiative. We have already 15 beautiful patrons. It's quite a bigger number than last month. And thank you everyone. By one? No, from last month is by one, but from the start of the month it was by 7, I think. Yeah. Eight. Yeah. So, in our Patreon, you guys can help us kill the monsters. We are trying to kill the hobgoblin, which gives us one more illustration to buy for our projects and our podcasts, games. Not loot, but items we do for you guys, homebrew items, everything you guys know that we do. And you can help us by making attacks. You can make a normal attack, a very mighty and powerful attack, even a spell, and so on. It's each spell and attack has its own value, so you can make what better suits you. We are thankful. We are very thankful for 15 patrons that already gave us the opportunity to buy an illustration for a Portuguese creature for our supplement, the Portuguese bestiary that we are every Monday developing with you guys on the chat. So everything is done. Let's start. With a beautiful and quite remarkable video of Reach of Titan by Jim McClure.
Bam, bam, bam.
The ground shakes under our feet. The sky darkens as it approaches. Grab your steel, make peace with your soul, because destiny itself approaches. We are in the presence of a Titan. Welcome to Reach of Titan, a new tabletop role-playing game from Third Act Publishing. Reach of Titan is a game about fighting larger-than-life creatures. Players take on the role of Titan hunters, the protectors of their village that must go out and defend their people from the giants of the world. This game is one part Shadow of the Colossus, one part Monster Hunter, and a sprinkle of Attack on Titan on top. We've spent the last 3 years working on this project and are so happy to finally be publishing this game. Please check out the Kickstarter page below for all the details. However, there is still one thing needed to make it a reality. You. We need backers like you to support Reach of Titan in order to make this project a success. If this sounds like the kind of game that you're into, please lend your support here and now. Without you, this wonderful game...
We are back, guys. Instead of hearing us talk about Jim, I think it would be quite better for Bruno ask the question, the very first question.
Yeah,
Go
and
ahead.
that is the question that you can rumble all the time that you want, because it's all about self-promotion. So, who is Jim McClure? Tell us.
Who is Jim McClure? That's a philosophy question for the ages, right? Oh my goodness. Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Jim McClure, and I guess the reason I'm kind of here on this stream today is because I am a game designer from wonderful Ohio of the US of A. And I made a game recently called Reach of Titan. Made a bunch of other games as well. These wonderful gentlemen, or then again, I did 30 minutes of pre-production, so that wonderful gentleman's kind of coming down a little bit, but great guys. We'll stick with great guys. I kid, of course. Asked me to come on the show here and talk a little bit about it. So it's kind of to give you my background a little bit in the who is Jim McClure question. Within the world of tabletop, of course, I am the owner and lead designer of a company called Third Act Publishing. Essentially, we make and publish small press RPG role-playing games. I think we'll probably talk about a few of them. The notable ones are Reflections and Satanic Panic and Domina Magica, and now Reach of Titan. One of the other big things that I do is I'm also the lead game designer for Roll20, which I understand you all are into Roll20. And for those who may or may not know, Roll20 is getting into the RPG design business with their first game, Bryte, which is a game that I designed. So I also do a lot with Roll20 and sort of that side of it. And then I do podcasting. I kind of do one of these things, which is why like the lower half of my face is hidden from you, because I have a podcaster set up. So this is all just a mystery here. It's all just to give you a little intrigue, right? It's all about them eyebrows and them blue eyes, right? So that's kind of why I'm here. And that's the RPG stuff. Outside of that, what is it? I like long walks on the beach, reading good books, and I do traditional martial arts. I've done Ishinra karate and Shaolin Do Kung Fu for 15 years now, however long it's been. So yes, that is Jim McClure. He's a guy who loves role-playing games and loves talking about role-playing games, and a little bit energetic too. So
Hey, you talk very
excited
fast.
for a talk.
Yeah, awesome.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that awesome and really a beautiful presentation of yourself. But you have talked about that you are the owner, right, of Third Act Publishing.
Correct.
Why don't you talk us about a little bit more about what really is Third Act Publishing? What did you already make? How did it start and why? Is there any reason? It was a bet in a bar. What made the Third Act Publishing born?
Well, the fascinating thing about it is what birthed Third Act Publishing would be actually the game we're here to talk about, Reach of Titan.
Oh.
But you will notice it was not the first game that we made, because there's a story in that. But the reason we put this company together is because I've been making games since I was like 10 years old. Grew up on a small little horse farm in Maryland. Didn't have a lot of games, typical farm-like life, throwing hay bales and doing all of that wonderful stuff. So we had a few games, but not a lot. So what we ended up doing is anytime we got a game that was cool, I would sit there and make copies of the thing. And this is going to be a deep pool, but my very first game I ever made was a ripoff of an old computer adventure game called Hugo 3, The Jungle of Doom. Okay, I remember this game very specifically, yes. So it's a little adventure game, and it's a little bit more detailed than just like the text adventure. You actually had graphics and moved around, but it was kind of one of these like, oh, I need to, you type in tie vines together to get across bridge. It's one of those type things. So my first game is 32 pieces of paper. I still have it to this day, that you laid out in a map and you moved from one to the other and had to solve, at the time, very rudimentary puzzles. I was 10 years old. Give me a break, you know. And from there, it advanced to making copies of Final Fantasy games. I'm a big JRPG fan, so things like that. So I'd kind of been designing games forever, and then we didn't talk about this before the stream. I'm a big pro wrestling fan. I don't know how big pro wrestling is over there, but yes, I have support. Yes. So when I got back into pro wrestling when I was like 18, the first thing I did was I made a pro wrestling game, another game I still have, that will never be published because it's a terribly designed game, but I love it. And what happened was I had not been playing any tabletop. I didn't know about tabletop at this point, okay? And then when I moved to Ohio when I was 21, 22, we were, meeting new friends, new place, and all that wonderful stuff. My significant other, Emily, who also does design work with Third Act Publishing, she was the lead designer for Domina Magica.
Awesome.
She had friends at her new place of work who invited her, like, hey, we're doing a D&D night. And she was like, hey, do you want to go? And I was like, that nerd thing? No. I totally killed the mood. It was terrible. She went anyway because she's a smarter individual than I am. Came back, had the best time of her life, made me go, and 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons was my first role-playing game that I had the week after that, and it was love at first die roll. But the fascinating thing about it is, as soon as I played it, I was like, wait, I made one of these, and I pulled out my old wrestling game. I'm like, the similarities are astounding. Like, there's some wild design differences, which is actually kind of cool to look at nowadays, of designing an RPG before you knew what RPGs did. But that was so I tell you all that to say I've always been interested in design. I've always loved design. So then as I got deeper and deeper into the RPG community, of course, D&D is the first love, like many people is. And then I moved on to a game called Legend of the Five Rings, which is the greatest game ever made by mankind. Bam, I have planted my flag. Okay, it's better than anything I've made so far, but I love me L5R. Okay, I love me L5R. So
I've been playing it, actually.
Have you really?
Yeah.
The new
What's
fantasy
your clan, man?
Yeah, the new.
Clan?
Yeah, I've been playing Doji Ren from in Portugal. Crane, yes, from the Crane.
Crane would be the correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's your clan?
Okay, so all right, now we digress. Okay, L5R, and anyone on this stream who's ever seen me talk anywhere, I almost always bring up L5R because I love it. So all right, here's the terrible thing. My clan no longer exists in the game you are playing because it is the Spider Clan, which in that 20 years of history got axed. It doesn't exist in your world, okay? In my world, it's still a major clan run by the greatest character of all, Daikotsu. But we won't digress. Of the real, I'm going to say the real major clans, Crane is my second favorite. Phoenix is best clan because Void Shugenja are just the best. Like, you can play your samurai, but I would rather be a time-traveling psychic Jedi, so I don't know what you all are doing.
The lion are not pleased.
We found the mood killer in the room, the lion. Oh, goodness. All right. Well, now you all are L5R people. Now we're good. All right. Now everything's solid. Yep.
Let's get back in track.
Right. Somewhere. Well, we lost that a long time ago. No, so I got into L5R, and kind of how I got further into design is I was invited to come up to the One Shot podcast and run L5R. I kind of met James D'Amato from that, and I went up there and ran it, and it was a very well-received game from the audience. So people were like, Jim, you should do more and more stuff. And I was like, I really like designing games. I started talking on a podcast first and started my own show called Talking Tabletop, but I was like, I really want to design games. So one of the things I wanted to do, and this kind of probably ties into future questions, but we're here, so we're going to talk about it, is the thing that always bothered me about D&D and Pathfinder and sort of what I call traditional role-playing game experience is I wanted fights with big creatures to feel like fights with big creatures. Like in D&D, a fight with a giant thing is just something that takes up more squares and has reach. And other than that, it's pretty much, and you can't grapple it. I forget what 5th edition does with grappling now. But anyway,
it's the same.
Okay, yeah. It's and that's fine because D&D is not trying to be a fight giant creature simulator. That's not what the game's about. But I wanted that experience, and of course was very much inspired by. There's a very popular PS2 era video game called Shadow of Colossus. For those that are familiar with it, which is brilliant on levels it hurts me. It is so brilliant. But that game, obviously was one of the heavy inspirations. I go, I want that. I want a combat that is not just beating a large amount of hit points to death. I want something that's sort of like half puzzle, half traditional combat, and you have to figure out the way to do it and strategize and all these different things. So I had those ideas which were really good. So I started formulating this idea of like, I'm going to publish this book, Reach of Titan. So this is 3.5-4 years ago. Okay. As we may note, we're going to Tarantino this a little bit. The Kickstarter's live now, not 4 years ago. So there's a reason for this. Okay, which everything ties together as a good narrative should, right? So on the podcast that I talked about, I had on it John Zinzer, who is the owner of AEG. Who is the company that did Legend of Five Rings up until they sold it to Fantasy Flight. Okay. They sold it away from me. I was this close. Anyway, I love Fantasy Flight. Don't get me wrong, but if it would still be in AEG's hands, Jim would have his claws all over that, I assure you. But anyway, so we did literally an interview with him right after the sale. It was about the sale of L5R and transferring it over, because L5R pretty much kept AEG in business for 20 years. That was their core thing. And then they've done very, very well with moving into board games now. But so I had John on and I talked to him about it. And due to he doesn't mind me saying this on shows, so it's fine. But at the end of the podcast, I was the kind of person who demanded quality and required them to record their own audio. And John Zinzer's not the most technical, knowledgeable guy. So I talked him through it all. But once it's all said and done, he's got to export out his audio, and he's having a problem. And we spend 35 nail-biting minutes where I'm like, we're going to lose this perfect interview that we just did, and I'm going to cry, and that's what's going to happen. But while we're sort of troubleshooting this process, we have a conversation, and he asked me sort of more about what I'm doing. I kind of tell him about this project, Reach of Titan, that I'm interested in. And I'll never forget the words that John told me. John went, Jim, this project sounds great, sounds interesting. It sounds really big, really complicated, and you don't know what you don't know about publishing a book yet. You should really start with something simpler. And John, as a man who's been in the business for 20 years doing that, is 100% correct, because this is now the 5th or 6th or 7th, depending on how you choose to count, game that I have gone through and published. And every one I've learned new things, and I can't imagine what a catastrophe this would have been if I would have tried to do this first. So that is sort of the genesis of Third Act Publishing. Was Jim wanted to do the very game we're here to talk about, and got very good advice that was, hey, you should do something smaller and simpler to learn this process first. And we have now gotten to the process and finally gotten to the point to actually get Reach of Titan out into the world.
Awesome, Jim. Awesome. I have a question from Twitch chat. Was there any time first or second act publishing? And why third? It's the question from the chat.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful, hilarious question. No, there was not 2 other failed iterations of the company beforehand, but I will tell you actually what the name of the logic on the story is I'm kind of known, and I talk a lot about narrative structure, especially narrative structure in tabletop. I'm obsessed with it. Okay, here's another story to then finish the story, right? Because if you haven't figured out the way Jim works now, it's all just stories all the way down.
Awesome.
So the first time I figured out narrative structure was I was watching Aladdin, like Disney's Aladdin. They had a TV show that was actually really, really good. Okay, so I'm a youngin watching the Aladdin television show, and I had the realization. I was like, wait a second, every episode they just have a villain shows up, and then things get really bleak, and then they find a way and beat him, and everything's fine. And I was like, wait, is that what's going on in every show? And I ruined entertainment for myself for from ages like 9 to 14. Because of course, kids TV, it's all very simple plot, but that is the basis of what's called a 3-act plot structure. And I figured it out intuitively, and again, just ruined everything until anime hit America, and then I was like, this doesn't follow 3-act structure at all. This is fascinating. But anyway, so I'm very obsessed with narrative theory and sort of working on that side of things, and I'm a very big proponent of incorporating the 3-act structure. While it's very, very simple, it is the story structure that we all have been ingrained in our minds from almost every story you've been told since you're born. You know, it's novels, it's TV shows, it's movies, it's everything. It's what people intuitively understand of a story to be, and the final act is always the best. It's the finale. It's great. So that was the reasoning of 3rd act publishing. So there's 2 stories for 1 from a silly question. How about
Beautiful.
It's the fireworks, the climax of the adventure, the thing
Exactly.
that really sticks in your memory and your brain. Hey, something
Bingo.
blew up, right? And that's what great memories are made of.
Bingo.
And in order to make memories, normally we create memories at the table by playing RPGs. And you've already said that you've made a lot of RPGs when you were a little kid, and you always have enormous amounts of projects on the table. But you still you don't produce them all to completion. Do you select them by interest or by production status? Do you think, well, this one might go all the way, this one is just a good idea that's going to stay behind? How do you select them, and how do you make them come to the final stretch, to the goalpost?
So that's a very, very, very good question. And the answer is a terrible answer. Like, God, I wish it was more interesting than this. But the answer is I do this for a living now. The first couple years I sort of did this along with my day job, which was a very, very boring day job. But in the last, September last year, I started doing this full time. So what makes it a boring answer is I have to go whatever I think is going to sell the best, which is a horrible capitalist thing, but we live in a horrible capitalist landscape, so that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
So I will give a better answer than that now, or a more interesting aspect of your question, because again, the honest answer to it is like, it's whatever's going to sell the best. I think, I hope, and I cross my fingers, which isn't
It's
interesting.
not bad. It's not a bad answer, because if it sells the best, it's because people are liking it and they're trying to enjoy and create the community. It's not really a totally sellout answer. It's realistically the answer that gives you the more outreach.
I need you on my right hand side correcting my statements when I say these nonsense things, because I like that. That's good. I'm going with that.
Sorry.
I can even
Sorry.
add. No, I can even add, guys, Jim, that whatever sells the best. I do not agree with you because you don't make Dungeons and Dragons supplements. You make your own games, your own designs.
That is a true statement.
And it broke me watching Matthew Colville talk about the business of role-playing game, and he said, "Is there a business outside of Dungeons and Dragons spectrum?" And it broke me totally. So you challenge the industry with your own games, and I'm really glad. Sorry, that you now are able to make it a full-time job. Awesome.
Well, thank you.
Congratulations,
and
man.
I do very intentionally challenge the industry to a degree in that, I do that. I go like, I am making my own games in my own systems, and that's nothing to be derogatory about anyone that works in D&D or Powered by the Apocalypse games or Fate or what have you, because there's a lot of interest in those games. But what gets me, what got 10-year-old Jim out of bed in the morning is the same thing that gets 31-year-old Jim out of the bed in the morning, which is, I want to make a new mechanical system. I want to make a thing that makes people think and act and react in certain ways, and that's it's intoxicating to me. Like, I gotta have that, and that's my drive. So I do a lot of that type of work. What is interesting is some of the things that don't get published are just a lot of times the answer to what doesn't get published is I go, it's too weird. or just it's a bad mechanical system. I mentioned this earlier. I have a professional wrestling role-playing game that I made when I was 18 years old. I'm going to nerd out for a second, all right? So bear with me here, okay?
Sure. Go ahead, man.
I play that game myself to this day. I have stupid amounts of stats and statistics. I'm getting ready for my 11th completion of seasons, which is going all the way through. It's 2 weekly shows. It's stupid, okay? It's nerd things, and I love it, and I don't care, okay? So I'm going to enjoy it. I love it. That system is such a dumb hodgepodge of rules that it is, I'm going to say, probably unplayable outside me. I bring it out in a local convention that we have here every year. So there will be a small group of like 8 people, whoever gets on my table, that get to play Jim's stupid wrestling game every single year. And I actually think it's got some inventive mechanics, but again, it's a hodgepodge nonsense. And then you get to the weirder ideas, which some of these might eventually come out. I've got a game sitting in my head right now. I've told a couple people about this, called The Ugliest Squirrel in Squirrel Town. Okay, that's not going to sell as many copies as Reach of Titan. It just ain't. I assure you of that. Okay, and it's about the ugliest squirrel asking out the pretty squirrels to prom, and then them saying no and having to reject him in the nicest way possible, and then him having to accept how he's still friends with them. It's super sad. It is a emotional battery machine, is really what it is. At the end of the day, and it's so weird that it's just sort of sits up here, right about in that brain space. I think there's a section that every about week or so, it's like, Jim. Write that game. Write Ugliest Squirrel in Squirrel Town. Do it. Put it out in the world.
Awesome.
So I've pushed it back so far, but one day that game will be out, and the 12 people who play it will hate me forever.
Please do.
Please do. We'll certainly play it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Jim, from the games you have made, this is a hard question, we know, and but it's like asking what your favorite son is or child. So, what is your favorite? Can you say? Can you answer what is your favorite game you've made and why?
Oh, it's so.
It's a life. It's a life or death
question. It is, but I'll give you an answer for it. Okay, let me do it, because here's the terrible thing. It's not Reach of Titan. So yes, it's Reach of Titan, my favorite game ever. Everyone go back, take Scarter, yada yada yada. All right, real answer. Okay.
Yeah, real
answer. I love Reach of Titan. Okay, but my favorite game for I'm gonna say multiple reasons that aren't just even necessarily the game itself. The first game I published was a game called Reflections. Okay, and Reflections is probably my favorite game, and I'll explain why here. But the basic concept of Reflections is it is a 2-player RPG that you play in 1 hour. Okay, again, not going to sell as many copies, but it did pretty well. It's my first Kickstarter, and we did pretty darn well on it. The basic concept of the game is you the 2 people play samurai. Okay, 2 samurai that have come to have a duel to the death, and the game starts at the moment you're about to have that duel. But then you flash back in time to the beginning of your relationship when you're friends, and play through the life of being friends up until the moment where you're going to fight. And it's guaranteed that at least one or possibly both of you are going to die. The goal of that game is to make you cry in an hour. Jim makes games that make you laugh or make you cry. We're starting to figure out Jim's existence now, right? Got to have both extremes of the emotions. So that's probably my favorite game that I have made. And the couple reasons for it is, one, it's the only game I have ever made that literally in a 3-hour car ride, I made the mechanics for the game and it just worked. Like, almost what's in the book is very small tweak. There's one mechanic that I kept tweaking just a little bit, and that was just my own neurosis. But like, it was just like, it was the easiest design ever. I was like, I've got an idea for how to make this work, and I fleshed it out. I was like, oh, and it worked. Well, can't all design be this easy? It is not. I agree with that.
But I first read Reflections, first intro, and I thought, okay, an RPG about 2 samurais fighting each other. So what will be the outcome of it? And then I start to read the rest of it, and I said, okay, this is very narrative. It was
contemplative also.
Yeah, and I love the time lapse feature, because I do it also in my narrative, and it's awesome. It brings memories for the players, and they don't know how to beat it in the real play. So there's I'm making. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I don't know if you know, Jim, but in the challenge of 200 RPG words, yeah, it's ridiculous, but quite fun to participate. There was an entry. I will try to find it, Jim. There was an entry inspired by reflections. Okay?
Yep.
Do you know about it or no?
I was a judge on the 200 word RPG contest last year, actually.
Oh, okay.
It was you.
It was you that make my game lose. No, I'm kidding, man.
Oh, I heard that. Trust me, I heard that. Listen, if your game lost, it deserved to lose. No, I'm kidding. No.
Awesome. Okay, then you
Gets better.
I was actually kind of happy because I don't think the Reflections game made it into the final 50, did it? I don't believe it did. I remember seeing, because I actually read all 700, whatever it was, because I love game design. I'm kind of really into RPGs, if you didn't notice. And I love game design. I love narrative, and 200-word RPG brings out a ton of those things. So anyway, I was actually on the top-end judging panel, so we got the 50 finalists that we judged and got the 3 winners from. So I was actually kind of glad Reflections didn't make it, because if it did, I was going to have to tell them, like, I've got to recuse myself from this, because I'm like, clearly it's the best. It's based off of my favorite game, right? Like, didn't have to go that far, yes.
See, Jim,
Okay,
let me tell you that my game didn't go through the final 50 or the final 100, I don't know. But anyway, I'm still going to produce it in this year. So
as you should, as you absolutely should. My first game that I actually put out, because Reflections was the first one that I sort of call that I published, but my first game that I actually put out was kind of going to be an entry for the 200-word RPG contest. Is before I was more affiliated with them. I actually do some back-end stuff with David, who runs that thing, to kind of help him out on some stuff. But I had, all right, I'll tell you about this game real quick, because this one's funny and stupid, and I love this. It's an outside-the-box mechanic that actually got into the world, and it's out for free. It's called The Terrible RPG. That's TEAR, Terrible RPG. It's awesome. It's a one-page RPG, and it's a pun, because how the game works is you take a one page, on the back side of your character sheet, you get to write down any 6 skills you can imagine, and they can be serious or they can be stupid and ridiculous. And when you want to use the skill, what you have to do is physically tear your character sheet to remove off a piece of it that contains at least one letter of the skill you're going to use. And if you do that, you succeed. You can also end up accidentally ripping off huge portions of your character sheet, because there's restrictions on how you do it. So it's a stupid, fun, lighthearted game, and it sounds like maybe have you seen it or played it or heard it before?
Yeah, I already read it. Yeah.
Wonderful, absolutely. Awesome. And it's a great amount of fun. So that started out as a 200-word RPG that then I beefed up a little bit and sort of put out. And that was the actual first thing I released. I don't really call it published, because it's out for free. It's a one-page RPG. I guess technically it's published. But if I didn't have to lose nights dealing with international shipping and editors and layout, then I don't consider it published, because that is the work. Good Lord, I won't complain about that. But anyway, I don't remember how we got down this rabbit hole, but we're here now. We were talking about reflection. So I'll give you one other thing about reflection. Because we talked about it. I got to have a couple people that really helped me get into the industry be on that book, which made me super excited, which is John Wick, the guy who invented Legend of Five Rings. He is in there on the book, because while the default setting is 2 samurai facing each other, the game actually works pretty much with any situation where you have a one-on-one conflict. So in the back of the book, we've got like 5 different sort of ways that you can play it. So John Wick did like a sky pirate thing, which was really cool. And then I also had Ken Hite, Ken Hite's known for being Ken Hite. I don't know. He's kind of known for everything. That's Ken these days. Of course, most recently he worked on Vampire 5th Edition, but he also did Trail of Cthulhu and Night's Black Agents, and Ken's been around for 25 years. So I got to have sort of both of them on Reflections, and they wrote stuff. Ken did a Wild West Gunslingers thing for it. So it was kind of really nice to get a couple RPG industry heroes of mine that came on and be part of the project, and I got to work with them a little bit. So it was really cool for that reason too. So those are the reasons that I like Reflections.
Beautiful.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Jim, you talked about games that you made in your life, your favorite game, but we really want to know what is Reach of Titans, your game that you have on Kickstarter, and it's already funded. So could you tell us a little bit about it,
Yeah.
please?
Yeah, so Reach of Titan is I think a simple premise with a lot to it, which is the idea is that it is an RPG about fighting giant, larger than life creatures called Titans. Okay, this is the game where you all are going to be little tiny human beings and you're going to climb up, creatures that are utterly massive in scale and stab at them with your little tiny sticks and swords to hopefully bring them down and feed your village. Okay, that is what this game is about, and it is unapologetically about that. It's the thing that you do in this game is you go and you hunt and you kill big titans. There's a couple other things, but that's what it is. There's actually some interesting design decisions that came along with that of like, can you fight human-sized things? And the answer to that is no. This game is about fighting titans. Okay, I'm again unapologetic. That's what we're doing here.
Awesome. Jim, where did the larger than now it escaped me.
Yeah,
Larger than life creature expression came from? Because it's beautiful. It's just so subjective, and at the same time we get it.
Right.
How did it came to mind?
So there's two sources of inspiration that came from it. Okay, awesome. The first being I'm gonna say chronologically first being there's an old PS2 RPG called Shadow of the Colossus. It's a brilliant game. It's absolutely fantastic. I love it. In that game, essentially what you do, for those who haven't played it, is you play a lone wanderer that has to kill these 16 colossus. So you sort of like, you're this little tiny thing that's flailing and trying to hold on as everything shakes, including my microphone because I hit it. And it's very interesting and engaging, and it tells stories through the combat encounter, which was fascinating to me. The combat encounter wasn't how many times can I hit it with a sword. The combat encounter was, how do I figure out how to deal with this thing and then execute the strategy of dealing with it, which is brilliant. I love that. So then when I got into tabletop and I played D&D, like D&D does things well, but one of the things it doesn't do well, in my opinion, are these giant creature fights, because a giant creature fight in D&D is just a creature that takes up multiple squares and has reach and you can't grapple it. That's what you've got, that's it. And that's not a very engaging experience. It feels kind of just like any other combat encounter. So I wanted one that really had sort of that full experience that actually felt like, oh, we are tiny, tiny little things that have to climb up and stab and fight this thing, and kind of what that feeling and capturing that and some of the unique aspects and mechanics that we see in other media. Because, of course, Shadow of Colossus being one that's a good influence on it. The Monster Hunter video game also has a lot of influence, as well as for the anime fans, it's got I call it a splash of Attack on Titan in there, which is a wonderful anime for those who enjoy it. It's one of the few shows that's ever actually given me true dread. Hard emotion to capture, but those are kind of some of the inspirations that went into this game.
Awesome, Jim. Great answer. And we can feel in the Kickstarter video that we broadcasted at the start of the stream. You can rewatch it, guys, both here on Twitch or on YouTube in a couple of hours. So I feel that Joaquim has a deeper question regarding Reach of Titan. Oh! Get ready, Jim.
I'm preparing. I'm bracing. Okay.
Titans are larger than life, so common life of the tiny human is completely out of scale. So something different had to be made in your game, right? You had to make something completely new, completely different, that broke the mold of traditional role-playing games. So you had to include some features, some game mechanics to make everything work. Of all those features, which is the one that you think is the strongest?
Okay, very, very solid question. So the solid one, and this is kind of a Jim McClure design philosophy, especially when it comes to RPGs, is the core mechanic is what makes a game sing. And we did something really interesting with the core mechanic of this game. So If you look at Dungeons and Dragons, because that's a touch point that everyone knows, the core mechanic of that game is you have a challenge, you roll a d20, you add a modifier to beat a target number. That's the thing. And while that is perfectly serviceable, it didn't really gel with what we were trying to do with this game. It doesn't match kind of what we're doing, because where's the risk in that kind of mechanic? There needed to be a risk in the core mechanic, because you're risking life and limb to fight these things. So that needed to be present. So what I ended up coming up with is, and it's my favorite part of the game, is this core mechanic. Essentially, you have a dice pool, okay, of 6d6 dice. Okay. On your turn, you can take any actions that you want, and you can choose to spend however many dice you want on those actions. So if you wanted to take one action a turn, you could roll all 66, and that's your action. You're rolling against a target number that's on the Titan. Everything that you do, you're rolling against a secret target number on the Titan. If you wanted to take 6 actions in a turn, you could roll 1d6 per action, or any combination that you want to chop those things up. So what that does is it gives a very interesting pressure luck mechanic to the players, and it gives it to them at the moment of the roll. And that was one of the sort of the design pillars, as we call it, which was give players agency at the moment of the dice roll, which is, you want to try and climb up this Titan, okay? You want to climb up on the legs of this thing. How many dice that you want to use? Well, I could roll all 6 and guarantee I would get there and be able to do more next turn, but that's actually not optimal play. What you want to do is try and press as many as you can, so you can climb up higher and higher and start stabbing into the thing in different places. So you have to sort of wager and guess how much you want to do, and then if you're climbing and you fail one of the rolls, pew, you're falling down to the ground. So how do you weigh and judge these different things? So that is kind of how the core mechanic works. To then add another layer to it, because we've got several layers kind of built onto it, is defense works as an active defense stat. So what happens is, when the Titan makes attacks, the Titan's not rolling anything. You have to roll to defend against them, or you get hit or shaken off, or any of the other various things. So now you have to weigh, do I save some of my dice for defense, or do I spend them all? So now we have another layer to our little thing that we are dealing with. And then finally, to attach sort of on top of it to complete the thing, is how damage and hit points work. Because when I started looking at what happens in games like Shadow of Colossus, it has hit points, but they don't work the way we're used to them working. You would fall off of a Titan and hit the ground and take a whole bunch of damage, and then you would just sort of slowly heal yourself back up mid-combat and get back up. And like, traditional HP doesn't jive with any of that. So instead, I was like, my design things that I want it to do is combat needs to feel scary to a degree. You have to be scared of this thing. If it's just a giant teddy bear crawling around, then who cares, right? Like, it needs to feel lethal. But just constantly losing hit points isn't going to work with what we're trying to do. So how do we balance out these wonderful things? How do we balance out these wonderful things? Yes, or getting one-shotted, which yes, is one of those horrible things. So I came up with an idea, which anytime I hit an impasse, what I try and do within design is tie everything back together. You know, making subsequent mechanics and systems always makes things more complicated. The more you can tie together, in my opinion, the more elegant the design comes out. So what we did is we tied hit points to your 6 dice pool, okay? So you have these pool of d6s. If you were to take damage, let's say you get hit with an attack and take 4 points of damage, you roll 4d6. If any of those land 1, they're permanently removed from your dice pool. So now, damage doesn't always deal damage. In fact, frequently it doesn't. But when it does deal damage, it removes from your action economy and is very, very impactful.
It makes you weaker.
Yes. So now you have this odd situation where I fall off the Titan, 1 out of 3 times is the only time I'm going to take damage. But the first time it does, it severely limits me for the rest of the encounter, as will more and more, because I have less dice. So it sort of meets that requirement of both like, damage is damage and scary and terrifying. But we also still feel pretty durable against these things and willing to take risks. And in playtesting, it's come out pretty well. So awesome. As far as my favorite mechanic in Reach of Titan, it's sort of that whole envelope of the 3 parts of the core mechanic that tie together really well. I'm super happy with the way it came out.
Awesome, Jim.
Congratulations. I've already read the playtest documents. I've
also
seen the session you did with the Roll20 team.
Oh, wonderful! Yes,
this
that was a lot of fun. Yep.
Yeah, everybody had a lot of fun. Me too. I loved it too.
Good.
And I think your mechanic of damage affecting the number of dice that you have for actions is very well inspired. It's really inspired and very good, because it really represents how the characters, how the injuries affect the action. Normally in Dungeons and Dragons, injuries don't affect your efficiency of stabbing a monster with a sword. Like this, with this mechanic, that actually has a really big impact.
Yeah, massive impact. I appreciate the compliment on that. Yeah, it's you know, to put on the designer hat for a second. You know, I talk to a lot of people about game design, and you know, one of the big advice kind of I give to everyone about game design is, I honestly say it's not that hard to come up with new systems and new mechanics, but the problem that a lot of people have when they try and do it is their first step is like, I want to invent a new mechanic. How do I do this? And it's like, no. You're already starting off the wrong direction. Think about what you want to try and accomplish from the game. Like in the example we just used, I need to emulate this system of Shadow of Colossus where people fall off giant titans, take damage, but it's not traditional damage because that's not what applies. How do I make that feel happen in a game? And once you know what you're going for, then it becomes, again, I call it easy to go, okay, now I need to make mechanics. Now, easy sometimes requires multiple iterations and play tests and all of that, but you know what you're going for and what to get from it. So there's the designer hat coming back off, because you get Jim on Design Talk, and we'll be here. We will be here all evening. Yes.
No, it's awesome, Jim, and the solution is very elegant, very beautiful. I quite amusing. I find it quite amusing when role-playing games treat hit points in a non-traditional way. So thank you for doing that. Also, Shortmanian444 from Twitch chat is saying, "Hi, back the Roll20 version as well. Did designing for a VTT come in play when you were designing game?"
So yeah, that's an interesting question. The original early designs, like how we talked about, that happened 4 years ago. Roll20 was not a thought process at that point in time of it. It was designed specifically for table play. But what ended up happening, I mentioned a little bit when I was introducing myself, is I got hired in by Roll20 to be their lead designer. There's actually, it's myself and James Intercasso, who writes for Dungeons and Dragons, a great guy. Are sort of the two primary lead designers for it. I'm lead mechanical design. If you can't tell, that's my forte. But so as I got designing for the game, for the Roll20 platform, I saw the amazing power and potential of Roll20. Now, I've been using Roll20 for a long period of time. I actually checked the other day. My account was made, I think it's like 2.5 months after Roll20 went live. Like, I love Roll20. I'm a big fan of it. Roll20 is a place that allows a lot of people that would not have access to a role-playing group to gain that kind of access.
It's so strong.
Yeah, it's great, and it's a system that, other than it's got a few bugs, you know, I'll always give Roll20 that. I go, fix your voice and video, please. Although we have so many other suggestions, I've been giving Nolan crap about that for years. But anyway, Roll20 is a great, wonderful place. It is an incredibly underserved market. You know, if we now we put on business hat, Jim, for just a second. It has 3 million users. There is a 3 million person convention going on every single day of the week. And I looked around and I'm like, none of the other designers are supporting this. You know, now obviously they've got Pathfinder on there, they've got D&D, they've got Starfinder and some others. But you know, those are big enough of projects that Roll20 essentially help with implementation. Roll20 doesn't help with implementation on games like what I do. It's up to the designers to do that, and most people won't touch it because, you know, it's work and it's new and people don't understand it. But I'm sitting here looking at it going, there's a 3 million person convention going on. Why in the world aren't we supporting these people? And it's one of the very few unique entry points to the hobby. You know, we talked a little bit about that before we got on the chat. Like D&D is kind of the entrance point to the hobby. It's what people know. You know, when anyone who's not in the industry or knows the hobby, they say, Jim, what do you do for a living? I go, I design role-playing games. And they're like, what? I go, like D&D stuff. And they're like, oh, D&D.
Oh,
right.
D&D,
Yeah, exactly. You know, my father has no idea what a role-playing game is. He knows what D&D is. You know, that's the touch point. But Roll20 is actually a place where people that hear about it and get interested by watching streams and podcasts and shows like we're doing here can then, if they don't have people in their circle or they're, you know, in an area, you know, a more rural part of the world and don't have access to a game shop where they can do this, Roll20, they can get on there and do it, which was fascinating to me. So I really wanted to support it. You know, I've been a big proponent of Roll20 for years, and then when I got to sort of interact more and more with it, I was like, absolutely, let's do this. Then when I started thinking about Reach of Titan, one of the fascinating things I realized, I was like, there's actually an aspect of this game that is going to be better on Roll20 than in person. And that's because for those who've looked at through the playtest document, looked at the art, you notice that every single Titan has like a Titan illustration. Use that as your battle map to climb it up. And all combat in Reach of Titan is vertical based. Okay, it's all upward. We don't care about that flat two-dimensional where you are around the Titan. Doesn't matter in the game. It's all about height in this game. So with that, what the interesting is, if you all are sitting around a table and I lay that in front of me, okay, the person directly opposite from me has the right perspective, but none of the people on the side of the table. On Roll20, everyone immediately has that exact correct perspective. So it's one of the things I'm like, that will actually work better in Roll20 than it will in Meat Space. So it's sort of all of those things together was like, and then I approached Roll20. I was like, hey, I want to do it. And they were very supportive, you know, and have been super supportive of the game and of the project and us getting it on Roll20. So as noted, I say backers, when they back to get the game, you can just get the Roll20 version. You can get it bundled with other stuff. You can sort of do whatever you want with it. But Roll20 will see future support from pretty much all of Third Act Publishing's projects, because I just think it's such a great way, and it's so starved for especially indie content. You know, if you want to have it, so I want to be able to put that out for people so that they have options that aren't just D&D, because as we talked about, you can only play Monopoly so many times, and you can only play Dungeons and Dragons so many times before you want to try something new.
Indeed, Jim, indeed. And you said something rather interesting that I would love for you to go deeper in it. You said the expression in Reach of Titan, which all of you guys can get it right now in the Kickstarter. We already shared the link. There's also a quick start, a playtest PDF freely available for you guys, so you can grab that and play it and give feedback to Jim. So the sentence was, combat is vertical, not horizontal. And we can, as I start reading, combat in Reach of Titan happens in the vertical plane. Let's talk about that a little bit. How does that really work?
Yeah, so this is a
because it's quite different. It's not.
Yes, it is. It is. So this was sort of an interesting design thing of, you know, when we start looking at again what I call traditional tabletop, which is your Dungeons and Dragons, your Pathfinder. You know, we all know exactly what a battle map looks like. You know, some of us use squares, some of us use hexes, but it is a top-down view of a battle that's happening, and that's because D&D originated from Gygax playing war games. You know, we set up all of our Civil War figures, and they had fights, and they did the whole thing, and that's how you did that kind of combat. Probably most people that have played D&D for a certain period of time have realized, like, okay, sometimes like height's a thing, and that's kind of just always difficult to deal with because we're looking at it from, you know, a two-dimensional downward perspective.
Make a jump check.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Always.
Yeah, that's what you got. You know, that's all you have to work with.
You have a climb speed.
Destroyed.
So looking at that, you know, it was like, okay, we can't do that. And ultimately, as I got thinking about what matters more in these Titan encounters, and whether you're in front, left, right, behind, whatever, it's like the Titan just turns and can face any direction. Like, it doesn't matter. So if we don't care about that, we shouldn't be looking at the combat from top down. Let's just rotate it and look at what's important. And it also gives that perspective of like, we are down here on the ground. That thing's head is, 150 feet in the sky. That's interesting and engaging. So it's just a rotation. Now, I will say this: the game does have because of this design choice, sort of the then opposite issue of D&D of you get the, okay, well, I'm a side or I'm going to get distance from it and all that. And it suddenly becomes like, nah, it doesn't really matter. Just ignore that. And it's like, what do you mean it doesn't matter? It's not what the game is about. And it's one of the things the designer eventually have to do is go, what is my game about and what is it not about? And if you try and make your game about, anything, you're just going to ruin your game. And this game made the decision that, hey, what we're doing is we are climbing titans and height is what matters. So then to get into the mechanical side of things, how it actually works is essentially we count levels because prescribing individual specific distances are so just, who cares? Let's get to what matters, which is how many levels you are above the ground. So your first section of titans that connect with the ground, that's all level 1. Above that's level 2 and level 3 and so on up. So when you fall, for instance, you take a number of damage equal to how high you were. I was on level 4, I take 4 damage. I roll 4 of those dice. Hopefully none of them pop up as ones. I fall from the ground level, I only have to roll 1 dice because it was a much lower fall. So that's kind of how that height works. So a lot of the game is based around climbing around these titans on different levels, again, finding their weak spots, finding the way to stab and engage with these things, and fighting, as everyone you see going up, going down, shooting anchors into parts of the titan, and you have this very dynamic battlefield that's actively moving with you. So that's kind of how that whole wonderful vertical combat works.
Awesome, Jim. And sorry, Joaquim, go ahead.
Just a little side note: when the monster is bigger than the map, the monster becomes the map.
Right, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, it's awesome. Jim, you already answered a chat question without even hearing it about. Okay. So good job on that. But Rio GPT, which is Ricardo Lopes, is a comic artist and is a very lovable follower of our community. He said, "First, I'd like to say, Jim, you're being an amazing guest. This episode is being so captivating. I think it is one of the best ones yet." Thank you.
I will appreciate and take the compliment, but the energy and charisma coming from the three of you, I don't believe that for 1 second.
No, it is, man. And also, he wanted to ask, what kind of mechanics did you introduce in the game to translate that feeling of fighting something that is out of scale? You actually already answered it, but if you want to...
Would you like to know more? I can give you more.
Yeah, sure, give us more. Yeah. Give us more about that.
I could talk for... There's like 18 mechanics I could talk for 20 minutes each on, because I can, as you can tell, run at the mouth for a long period of time.
It's beautiful, Jim. It's beautiful.
Yes, shutting up is not one of my talents. Sorry. But no. So one of the other things that is interesting with the design, as the question asker pointed out, is a human and a rock golem that's 250 feet tall are just so incompatible objects. And if you look at, again, I shouldn't keep referencing traditional tabletop, but I am traditional tabletop. In D&D, the same stats govern a player as what's govern, a bugbear or a dragon or whatever. It's the same mechanics. And I actually think that's a detriment to this type of game of what Reach of Titan's trying to do. So it is entirely different mechanics that govern how the players act and exist and what they do, and what the Titans act and exist. The Titans don't have a dice pool of 6d6. This is a game where the GM does not roll anything at all ever in this game. Because again, we want agency at the moment that the player makes the roll. We want to give the player all of the power. Beautiful. If you ever fail a roll in Reach of Titan, it's because you as a player chose to fail. I'm going to tell you that right now. You chose to try and take too many actions or to risk it, which is part of the game and should be part of the fun. But you could play Reach of Titan and 100% succeed all of your rolls if you chose. You might still lose the battle that way, but that's some of the fun that we have. So with Titans essentially are big engaging stat blocks, okay? So each Titan actually has its own separate parts and separate actions and all that. So let's actually, this will be a minor spoiler for anyone, but let's talk about we're talking about one of the Titans. It's spoiled for anyone playing the playtest, okay? To give you an example of kind of how these things work. So the Legatos, which is this giant big soldier, he's got this old cracking stone armor, he's got a big stone sword. Essentially they were left behind by their god in some big epic war, and we can actually talk about the history of this world, because that's fascinating in a non-boring, I'm going to give you a bunch of lecture on history that you don't care about, but anyway, that's another question. So anyway, this thing was left behind by its god. All it does is wander around and eat all day, and it's gotten huge, and it's got this huge fat gut. So that's what you come up and engage with. So each of parts of the Titan, you've got the legs, the torso, the right arm, which is its armored sword arm, the left arm, and its head. And that's what you have to fight and engage with. So the common thing that most people do, they're like, hey, that looks like a human. I'm going to climb up and stab it in the head. That sounds like the thing to do. It's what I would do with it, okay? So then you climb up to the head, and then you get up there. And the first thing it does is it takes its left arm and it grabs you and it slams you back down on the ground.
Beautiful.
And you're like, well, that didn't work. Big sword that it's swinging, dealing with all that. And the puzzle of the combat is, okay, we have to get rid of the left arm before we can attack the head. Because if we shoot arrows at the head, it brings its left arm up to block them. So now we're like, oh, this is the stages to do that. So we can directly attack the left arm. The other thing is, while damaging the head will kill it, that's not the only way to kill it. If you attack the gut that's been engorged, essentially it will split open. Its guts will start coming out. This game is gross sometimes. Be prepared for that. And Perfect. Then it will take its left arm and hold them in. Now it can't defend its head. Or if you take out the left arm, it will naturally bleed out from the damage that you did to the gut. So you have multiple things going on, multiple different ways that you can kill it. And a big part of it is figuring out what to do and how it will interact and how it will react to what we are doing as players. And then go look at the Leviathan, which just gets so much more mean. That's the one that's actually killed play groups so far. It is tough. But yeah, so ultimately what a Titan is, it's a bunch of different parts that act together, have stat blocks where the players have all of the action, all of the agency. So that way everything, all the choices is left on their shoulders.
Awesome.
Okay, can I ask a question?
Sure.
André,
Go.
So I was trying to not understand the mechanics, but trying to have the feel of how it was to fight the Titan. And my first question, it was, what are the Titans made of? And how you came up with the idea of hunting Titans to feed the tribe.
Okay. So that's interesting. So we have actually kind of two different questions wrapped up in that. So while we have talked a lot about the Titan hunting or the Titan fighting aspect of this game, and for those who go and check out the free playtest, essentially all you're presenting in that free playtest is the fighting part of it, because that's what I needed to playtest most, if we're being honest. But that's actually only a third of the game. The game exists in kind of three phases, and I love feedback loops, and I love cyclical types of play because it ties everything together so nice. Again, we always want our mechanics wrapped up in that little bow that looks like it was sitting under a tree, right? Like, I want that. So this game has three phases, which is settlement building, Titan hunting, and then Titan encounters. And that's kind of, you go through exactly in those things. If you first do settlement phase, which that's where a lot of your role play is going to happen. Well, I'll give you a little details on that. Then you actually go out and hunt the Titan. And when you're hunting a Titan, that's a topic entirely into of itself. But the long and short of it is you have to risk things that are important to your characters when you go on a hunt. And the longer the hunt goes, the more things you have to risk. And if you fail killing the Titan, which very much can happen in this game, you lose the things that you risked. So those are kind of your phases. Now, to your question, how that ties together is when you do kill a Titan and it falls and you've gotten it, what you do is you harvest it for food and resources, because Titans are one of your primary resources to be able to survive as humans in this world. This world was not made for humans at all. There is no crops that naturally grow that humans can eat. There's no animals that are human-sized. So protein exists in one place, and it roams the countryside, and it's hundreds of feet tall. There is ways to grow crops. Actually, that's getting in more to the lore of the world stuff. But so the other thing is you can also then harvest the Titan 4 specific resources, which you then use to build and expand your settlement. So you can get Titan iron, which is metal that you can literally harvest from the inside of these things, which then that's what you would use to then open up your blacksmith shop, which then gives you more items and equipment to then help you fight Titans. And this is where our feedback loop comes into play. So what we want to do is we want to, again, tie everything together as best we can. So in the settlement, gives us all of our like items and equipment that we can equip ourselves with. It's not a lot of RPG sort of equipment is individual to you. In Reach of Titan, what happens is as a Titan hunter, you are like the most important people in your village because you keep everyone fed in this horrible hostile world and defend it. So any item the town is capable of producing, you can requisition. Everyone can carry 5 items with them in battle. You all can take whatever you want. The way you get better items is you increase your settlement. Okay, and obviously you go and fight Titans, you bring back those resources, which then lets you increase your settlement. And that's sort of our mechanic feedback loop. The other feedback loop is if roleplay is detached from the mechanics, I think you've done something wrong in an RPG. So we need to get those things in together. So we've introduced what we call a will to live mechanic, which a will to live, again, we are in a settlement, we're in a hostile world. These are the things that make you keep fighting. These are the things that make you go out and fight these giant creatures. The reason you want to, it's your wife and kids. It is, because I'm the leader of the settlement, because I'm the religious leader, because, XYZ, whatever you want to come up with. So players establish will to live whenever they make an emotional connection with someone or something in their world. Okay. Those then connections are what's risked when we go into the hunt phase. And when we're in the combat phase, those are extra powers that you get to use when fighting the Titan. So therefore, what you're doing in roleplay is feeding back into the Titan. And the Titan's giving us resources and supplies, which increases our settlement, which lets us do roleplay, which feeds back into the hunt, which we risk, and we fight Titans, and we go round and round and round the circle until everyone's played enough like D&D and is bored and sick of it. That's kind of how all of that ties together.
Yeah, but I found it very awesome. You were talking about the feedback loop, because I'm a gamification designer and I talk it every day. It's my daily job, so I can truly understand that. But other than Titans, what are other stories to tell in Reach of Titan? You have talked about settlements, and you talked very times about settlements. So can you talk us about what is a settlement, or what you do in a settlement, what you can do in a settlement without only fighting Titans?
Yeah, absolutely. So at its core, this is a game of survival and understanding, and then I always hate to say this, and then other things that you'll find out through play, and everyone will find out once they have the book. So, okay, we're going to open a can of worms here. Let's get ready for this, okay? So, again, your primary component is, you all start out as, again, what we call a settlement, which is, a group of humans that is, barely on the verge of survival. So survival aspect is a strong component of that. But to be able to survive better, what you have to actually do is establish society and establish culture. So what you do in the game is you literally build and establish the culture of what you're doing, the society that you're involved in. So as an example, you'll get triggered at various parts within the game to sort of do these things of, okay, we just had our first player get killed, okay? First Titan Hunter died. What do we do with the dead? And we as a group are going to figure out what that cultural thing is. What is our government structure? What is our religion structure? We start building all of that together and actually building out a thriving society. And as it gets bigger, and as societies do, and once survival becomes not the number one thing, because we get pretty good at that in the late stage, then you start having all of the internal politics and strife and things that happen. And as being some of the most important people in the town, you now have to deal with that as well, of the group that goes, hey, like the last 3 months in a row, big giant creatures have come and tried to kick down our walls. Maybe we should move. And then the other half is like, maybe we shouldn't be moving because we've defeated all 3 of those, and maybe they're twice as big on the other side of the mountain. What do we do with that? So you're going to get those types of play. The other big thing that you're going to get is figuring out the history of this world. And I've kind of alluded a little bit about this, which is, again, as stated, this is not a world for humans, like at all. I mentioned like there aren't crops to grow. There's only one way to get crops to grow that humans can actually eat, and that is what's called a fertility titan. It's a giant stone egg thing that can't move that you have to have in the middle of your settlement, and that allows crops to grow. No one exactly knows why that is yet, but it does. And if you want to take out another settlement, you go kill their fertility titan. That's how you do settlement combat. Now, every time you beat a titan, you can take a piece of that titan and take it back to your town's seer. It's the closest thing that humans have access to magic to in this game, because you all don't really have magic, although magic is most currently present in the world. And the seer will then be able to tell you a piece about that titan, why it exists in the world, and what's going on.
Beautiful.
The story of the world is not presented. We talked about L5R before. As much as I love my L5R lore, and there is so many thousands of pages of it, when you're told the story of what's happened in L5R, you go, oh, read chapter 2 of the core rule book, give yourself a weekend at least to dig through it, and it's going to be a minute, and that's fine. But I wanted to do something a little bit more engaging with it. So what we did is essentially we took what is actually happening in the world, and we broke that up and put it within the descriptions of each titan. And if you want to find out what's actually going on, both as a person who buys this book and receives it, and as players, because it's designed to work that way well, you go and engage with the different titans, you read what's going on, and you can start piecing together what's actually happening in this world. And that's why I say there's going to be some emergent gameplay, because once that happens, there will start to become things clear of like, oh, we have things we can do besides just survive in this world. And that's as big of a hint as I'm going to give going into it. So it's hopefully an interesting, engaging way to sort of do lore of a world as opposed to just, here's a passive thing and here's what's going on.
It's awesome, Jim. Awesome.
Basically, you have tribal dynamics set up for the players to explore and to create the narrative behind the monster hunting. It's not something that is set on stone. It's something that they might be able to create as they are hunting and they are recreating their society after raising up as a new tribe.
Exactly. Yep.
It's beautiful. It's the aspect in one sentence the play to find out and play to discover, play to explore. So I believe that in Reach of Titan we play to find out what happens in the world and everything. I saw like this in a article. I can't remember the name. So everything that is discovered and find out in the table, it's really more important than the backstory. So really, really awesome choice, Jim. Designing awesome choice. But regarding
you're writing my press releases, goodness gracious.
Yeah, but Jim, regarding the three modes of play: settlement building, Titan hunting, and Titan killing, how do they really work in a session? It is supposed to be like each session, one session per mode, a couple of sessions, a couple of hours like mouse guard. How these modes of play actually work together in gameplay
without breaking the gameplay.
Yep. So it is supposed to work in a very cyclical fashion, and obviously, you know, the answer is going to kind of depend a little bit on group dynamic.
Of
but
course.
What I have found is that you can essentially in a what we kind of refer to as like the standard RPG session, which is a group of people for 4 hours playing, is kind of the average-ish experience. Again, everyone's mileage will vary on that, but in that amount of time, you should be able to go through about 2 cycles of it, which is Settlement Hunt Titan, Settlement Hunt Titan, to get about that in 4 hours. Now, for those who want to play longer, they could do more cycles. For those that want to play shorter, they could do that. And the game is also designed very much to be able to be done in very pick-up play, one-shot fashion of like, hey, our normal D&D, game, such and such didn't show up tonight. All right, I'll grab the book. Let me read 4 pages on a Titan. Okay, I can run an hour-long encounter. Let's go. And we can pick up and play. So it kind of covers all those different things. But within, sort of the breakdown of it, the settlement phase, I'm going to say, is kind of your biggest wild card in that's where most of your I'm going to say your role play aspects come out, as well as we have quite a bit of mechanics on the equipping yourself, as well as building out your settlement, all of that. But a lot of that's going to depend on how much people engage with. Again, the game is very actively engaging people, because the end of the day, what I always look at is I go, when people play games, they're going to power game the game. Okay, that is our natural thing we're going to do. And I don't believe in the concept that some designers go like, oh, well, don't worry about the power gamers because they're always going to find a way to do it. It's like, no, that's bad design. It's bad design to go, if you do this, you'll be great, but you just shouldn't do that. It'll throw off the balance. What's good design is to go, okay, if you're truly trying to power game, then you're going to do what the game tells you to do. So, and what the game intends for you to do. So in this game, the biggest way to power game is to go around and have emotionally engaging and connecting experiences with your character. That sounds like a ton of fun to me. That's what I play RPGs for. That will make you mechanically stronger doing that. It will make people role play within the settlement phase because that's actually how you're going to power game the thing. And then once you've already made those connections, the next step is then you have to risk them. And it's, oh, you know, my now new fiance, who I hope to set up a house with and start a life, is sick and has fallen ill to a poison, and the antidote is from that Titan's blood. And if I don't kill this Titan, she's going to die.
Shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And interestingly, as we get into narrative theory and sink deeper into the psyche, what really, really connects people to things and characters, it's fascinating, is if they have at first some kind of connection with them, and then they're given a chance that they might lose that, but they hold on to it. That sinks our attachment onto things really well, scarily well. So the game is literally designed to work specifically on those type of parameters of you have to fall in love with things, you know, in whatever capacity fall in love might be. Then you have to risk those things, and because you hopefully most of the time succeed and keep them safe, it causes deeper and deeper and deeper connections to them. So that's kind of how all of that works, you know, on the settlement phase side. So you're kind of doing all of that, and then when it becomes time that we need to go to a Titan hunt, which is typically when we're running low on food, or there's one that's coming for us and we have to defend ourselves, then we go into the hunt phase. The hunt phase is actually really, really short. It's not a particularly long period of time. It's some narrative description about what's going on. It's wagering our risks, and then it's making some rolls to see if we actually engage or actually find the thing. And if we don't find the thing, then we have to decide, do we continue the hunt, which then puts more things at risk to try and continue that hunt.
Awesome.
And then, of course, you ultimately find it. So that's kind of an overview of how that works without getting too into the, I'm going to say, the boring technicals of you roll this dice at this time. Like, that's less interesting. But that's kind of the overview of how that works.
I think the game is very tight and connected, the role-playing with the mechanics. And in the first glance that I have reading about Reach of Titans, I thought this was just not like a board game, but I thought, okay, this is just one phase, another phase, and another phase. And I thought it was disconnected. But listening to you about talking about this game, it made me feel completely different. And I think when you have these feedback loops and have all the things that each one is tied with the other one, because you role playing, because you want to get more mechanic driven techniques so you can defeat your Titan, but then you have to sacrifice the things that you just received by doing the role play to even getting further. That's a very good mechanic. And we are doing this talk because we want to know more about RPG design. We are doing our own RPGs because this is our main goal for 2019 to improve Portugal RPG design. So that's why we are talking and listen to all these wonderful guests that we're having in Diplomacy. So thank you very much. This was an awesome mechanic, and I love it to hear about it. Thank you.
It's all
Thank you.
connected.
Yeah, and I was going to just make a comment on that, because you know what you just said to me about the mechanic is you're by no means the only one, which is you're breaking it up into phases, and kind of phases of play is not something that we've seen a lot of in RPGs yet.
Yeah.
It's of course it's pretty prevalent in board games. Board games like to do it. Some video games, and it's one of those I think we are still really bad to a degree about learning lessons from other games industries and what they're doing and the good things they could be doing. You know, Likewise, a lot of the other industries could be learning a lot more from tabletop role-playing games. And phases of play, to me, I really like because they set up clear expectations about what's going on, but I completely understand people go like, well, that sounds a little board gamey and restrictive, and I go,
it's not.
Yeah, because I go, I totally understand that immediate reaction, but if it's designed well, they should all flow together and set the proper expectations for what's happening in a given scene.
Because sometimes when you have your goal and the goal is too high, when you have when you get smaller parts of that goal, it's easier for the players to achieve it, and they understand what they're going to get in that particular time. So it's almost like taking your goal into pieces. So
absolutely. I think about this. Here's a wild design thought for you. Okay, let's strap in for this one. All right. What if we put some of these weird phases into D&D, and let's say there was a phase in D&D that we called Epic Encounter, and when you entered the Epic Encounter phase, it meant this is a all-out boss encounter. You might die. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be huge, and all of that. We've now set an expectation as opposed to just, oh, the big bad showed up. No, we've called it a phase now. We've put perhaps a mechanic or mechanic tie into it. And what we're doing is we're telling everyone, hey, this is the big moment. Go do the big moment. And that only helps everyone doing stuff like that. And those are some of the kind of mechanical stuff that I would love to see more and more. I will give it just a quick shout out to a game. You know, the first RPG I personally saw that did phases, Jason Morningstar's Night Witches, has two phases that sort of split back between, which is brilliantly done because Jason's a brilliant human being. And you know, I personally would love to see more of that stuff in play. And you see it in my designs.
Yeah, Luke Crane and David Peterson for Mouse Guards. Shout out Mouse Guard for
Mouse Guard's fantastic. And you're right. I think, did Mouse Guards come out before Night Witches? I know I played Mouse Guard after, but I don't remember which came out first.
I think Night Witches was first, or in the same year, maybe even 2004.
They're relatively close anyway.
So let's turn the wheel from phase to Titans, and we have Metal Nerd Phoenix in the chat asking a lot of things about Titans, which you can maybe sum up in a beautiful answer. So he asks, James, what are Titans friendly or are they always aggressive? If they are aggressive, can they attack settlements? How intelligent is a Titan? Are they social creatures or always wandering alone?
The answer is yes to all of those questions. So yes,
next question.
Yes.
We're done. That's it. Let's go. There's a little bit of everything. So some Titans within the game represent a species of Titan. So we talked about the Legatus, the soldier. Okay, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of those roaming the land. Okay, and some act together in groups, and some are singular. There are Titans in the book that literally there's only one of them that exists. So we have differences in that. Titans are almost always hostile to human beings, mostly aggressively so. Typically, when a Titan comes across a human settlement, most Titans will actively try and destroy it. It's one of our first early clues as far as what in the world's going on in this world. That's that puzzle to be solved. But Titans do seem aggressive towards humans, but not all Titans are. Some Titans are not aggressive towards humans. Some Titans are designed to make you very, very sad if you end up actually killing that Titan, because we gotta pull all those different emotional strings different kind of ways. So there is a difference. There are some Titans that can communicate with humans and actually speak our language, and the game is very much designed of the first time you run into one of those for the players, just like as I see some of our hosts, it should be that kind of eye-opening of, wait, what? It just talked? What's happening here?
Of course.
Again, things to tie into the mystery of what's going on in the world. But those so you sort of get a little bit of all of that kind of stuff. There are Titans that are specifically for attacking human settlements. There's one that I'm kind of really excited about. It's essentially a giant living catapult that just has this horrible disease-filled pool in its catapult. And when you find this thing, essentially what you have to do is the win condition is to go and beat it and stop it before it fires and essentially annihilates, a good portion of your of your settlement. And literally, as far as we can tell, the only things these things are meant to do is destroy human settlements. They were made for that reason. And why? Again, more questions. And then there are actually one or two that are friendly. So there's kind of a mix. That's why I say yes to kind of all of his questions.
Awesome, Jim. So how about asking again a very provocative question from all the Titans you already created and are creating? What is your favorite and why?
Okay, I do have a favorite actually. I have a favorite Titan. Yeah. I know. I do have a favorite Titan. Okay, not supposed to pick your favorite kid. I have a favorite kid. And he's
don't tell them. Don't tell.
Of course not. Of course, I love all my Titans equally, but this is the one. So it is a Titan that appears in dreams of other Titans. So to fight this thing, you have to find a sleeping Titan is your first thing that you have to find. So you have to find a Titan that's sleeping on the ground, and then it appears as almost like this genie-type figure above that Titan. And then in the combat, you have to fight it. You can't communicate with your other team members, and if anyone, because that would then wake the sleeping Titan, which would poof this out of existence, or if anyone falls off and lands on the sleeping Titan below, it poofs it out of existence. So it's this very weird, surreal fight that's something that the first time someone comes across, like, there is a Titan asleep and there is a giant thing hovering above it with hands doing this, literally feeding off the dreams of that Titan. What in the world is going on? And then the combat encounter itself is so unique and weirdly different. So that's my dream Titan is my favorite. There's a lot of good ones in there, but that's at the top of my list.
Oh yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
Right. So different. You never think about that, something like that. That I was literally just in the shower one morning that popped into mind. I have no idea where it came from, and I was like, "Yes, that thing is great."
I want some more weird Titans.
No, okay. Let me add a question. And do you have a least favorite? And can you tell us why?
God, do I have a
Yeah. A least favorite Titan might be thematic, might be a mechanic choice, or even a feeling choice or aspect of the Titan. Why is the least favorite?
It's one of my rules in interviews. I never try and deflect questions, but it's going to be hard on this one because my answer would be, if I had a least favorite Titan, I'm not done designing that Titan, and something's got to change with it. But I hate deflecting because I interview so many people that deflect answers, and I go, that's terrible. Give me a real answer. So if I'm going to give you a real answer for it, and it's actually in the playtest document, the Horn Hog is sort of like I'm gonna say it's your introductory encounter. No one's gonna die to this Titan. This is a thing that literally was created for food for an army, and we like to hunt it because hey, it's a lot of bacon. So it's kind of an easy, non-complicated one to be like, okay, here's where the players can learn how the dice pools work in a non-threatening environment, all that type stuff. So I don't think it's very interesting, but it is designed to be uninteresting. But that will
serves a purpose.
Exactly, a non-deflection answer.
Awesome,
it's a training dummy.
Yes, exactly. It's a training dummy. Exactly.
It's a training
dummy, and it is in itself doesn't really have a lot of personality, but it's very useful for a new character. After they learn about Titans, probably they'll never fight a Horn Hog again.
No, it'd be so easy to fight once you know what you're doing. Yep.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
We in playtest just to see. We beat it turn 1 before we got to act. It's possible to do. Yeah. It requires a couple lucky dice rolls, but it is not difficult.
Metagaming.
You can't call me metagaming my own game. How dare you?
How does that work? Beautiful. Jim, tell me about something. Will game masters be able, or will Reach of Titan offer tools to game masters create their own Titans?
That is a fascinating question. The simple answer is yes, but we're going to go deeper into it. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Because this is, I should have known this, and I didn't realize this until recently. as you kind of heard, I like creating and I like designing stuff, and what should be no surprise to anyone is a lot of
Yes.
people do. Like, yeah, we are a community of super creative people that like to make things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
And I had never processed this in my mind until maybe a year ago. Okay. To be like, wait, someone would want to make things off of the thing I made? Why? I made the thing. There it is. Just do it. I made it great. Do your thing. No, but it is the reality of what our community does. Is we like to make. It's how I started. You know, the first after I played D&D 4th edition, what did I do? History should tell you I made a copy of D&D 4th edition that was not quite as good because I didn't know as much back then. But you know, that's what we do. So I something about this project in particular, I've never been asked so many times about, like, will there be support for people that want to make their own stuff for this game? Apparently the prospect of making your own Titans is a very enticing one. Again,
Yes.
should not be a surprise. What got me to make the book. So, like, yeah, that's where we are. So the answer is yes. It's going to be a little bit hard. I've actually been toying in my mind how to do this because like each Titan is kind of a unique combat encounter. So how do I give a template to do that?
Yeah.
It will be there. There will be one in the book. There will be guidelines. We're setting up our own Discord community as well for Reach of Titan, as well as on the Third Act Publishing website. Anyone who makes their own content, we're going to be happy to host it up there for free for other people in the community to design it, because if you all are making stuff and want other people to play it, I want to give you the best platform I can to do that. So we are going to have all that support. It is going to be in the game. That is legitimately something that I'm still actively working on, of how to present this in an interesting, useful way. And I think the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to give kind of a basic template, and then I'm going to give some more lengthy advice, as you can tell from listening to me talk, about kind of what I do to build combat encounters in this game to make them interesting, to be like, you know, like on the most basic level, you know, how a Titan encounter should go. Like, if we super basic is telegraph something on the Titan that's the obvious way to kill it, and then either make that not the kill condition or put obstacles in its way. So that's sort of the first level of understanding of, okay, the Legatus, I need to stab it in the head. Every time I stab it in the head, it uses its left arm to smash me to the ground. I need to do something about the left arm. I then have ways to do that, because that's what gives that sort of discovery and exploration through combat. So essentially that section, again, is going to be that basic template with a bunch of that kind of advice from me of, like, here are ways to make interesting Titan encounters from a game design theory standpoint. Take that and go wild with it.
Awesome, Jim. Awesome. Now, unbelievable. I asked the question without reading the chat, and the chat asked the same question regarding.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah,
There we go.
good. And we have one more from Amy. What was your thought process? Although you already shared it was in the shower, but what was your thought process to create the Titans? Would you see a movie and imagine a what if scenario or an object? Would be reading a story? What was the main process to create the Titans?
And again, this is an interesting yes to all type thing of, you know, inspiration, you know, and this gets into sort of the work design of being a creative, I think is what they say, which is a highfalutin title. It doesn't mean anything, but, you know, I'm a big fan of Stephen King and Stephen King's writing, and specifically his advice on writing, because the man has brilliant advice, hence why he's like the best-selling author of all time or whatever. But anyway, his thing on creativity, which is what I'll kind of echo here, is creativity, I don't believe is something that is innate and engaged in a person. It is a combination of life experience and showing up at the project to do the work and letting your muse hit you. So it is having a good range of a whole bunch of different, you know, just understand. Again, I watch anime, and I watch old action movies, and I watch sappy loves movies, and I watch, you know, everything I can to try and get inspiration. There's a terrible, it's hard for me to say, there's a terrible Robin Williams movie. I don't remember the details of. He was like a priest trying to get two people married. I don't even remember. That inspired me to write a story about an assassin circle. Nothing at all to do with it, but it got me moving, and the creative juices going and inspired me. So anything that you can do to sort of collect media, and I get inspired in different ways, and then showing up at the computer and going, okay, it is now time to work. I have to come up with 10 new Titan ideas. I'm not going to leave this computer till it happens. And eventually the brain starts ticking and going, well, that would be a cool thing. So like an idea was like, because some of these again come from direct inspiration, some of these come from mechanical inspiration. I looked at, okay, what are different ways that we can have a Titan get defeated? Okay, like, because stabbing one spot to death is only going to be so interesting for so many Titans. Okay. Yeah. So I was like, what are other ways just mechanically that we could do it? What if you had to destroy a section of connected zones? Okay, so like if I knocked 3 zones in a row and took them down to 0 HP, no matter what 3 that's destroyed, I'm like, what would match that? A giant ice creature, the ice bird that you see on the Kickstarter page. That's the way you actually beat that creature, is any 3 zones, once you split them, the fissures in the ice come together and the whole thing literally breaks apart. Yeah. So that is the one that came about literally from a pure mechanical standpoint of finding different ways to engage and deal with things. And then others are, you know, just either bits of inspiration or what you get from the world. And again, if you show up and start writing, most people that have the will to do that, you know, the creativity will come. It's inside you.
Beautiful, Jim. Beautiful. So we are almost running out of time, although time is irrelevant in our show. So go on, Juki, with the guideline. Dun, dun, dun.
Hey,
Tell,
Jim,
yeah.
Are there any secrets you haven't told anyone else about Reach of Titan that you want to share with us?
Okay.
Just
Just
don't deflect. Don't deflect. Come on, Jim.
I will accept deflections if they are entertaining.
No. Let me think of one. Let me think of a good one. I'll give you
a tiny little secret.
A tiny little secret. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. I feel like the secrets are going to have to do something with the lore. So yeah, let's give you a secret piece of the lore. Why not? That sounds fun. Okay, yeah. So one of the okay, yeah. Here is something that no one knows. I got a good one. Okay. I mentioned those fertility titans earlier, right? The things that allow crops to grow, and essentially we build settlements around.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the first time that a group ever kills one of those things and cracks it open, they find a human inside of it.
What?
Little thing, no one knows that yet. It'll be in the final book.
Now we do. Surprise!
Shit!
Yeah, surprise! So what is going on there?
What is going on there?
Hopefully,
they were human all along.
Wait! Are humans like chickens in our world?
That is an interesting observation. You should base your settlement's religion off of that. I think it's a solid ground to start your
So guys, you can, as the secret was revealed, you can start your theories and write on Reddit, send it to Jim. I know, I have a theory, or maybe play to find out. So regarding to play to find out, Jim, where can we find at this very moment Reach of Titan?
Yes, so the best thing to do is to go into Kickstarter/Reach of Titan. That's where it is as of the time we're recording this. It's got like 4 or 5 days left. It's Thursday evening local time here, Eastern time. At Thursday at 10 o'clock is when the Kickstarter ends. So if you're listening to this, you've only got a few days left. We have funded. We have way more than funded. At the moment, we're like 450% or something like that funded. So it's going really, really well. We only have one stretch goal left. Every one of our stretch goals for the campaign was adding an additional Titan into this book, because when I started planning out the Kickstarter, I was like, well, what can I get other people to write? And then I was like, everyone just wants more Titans. Why make this more complicated? Just give everyone more big giant things to fight. It's what I would want. So, you know, between their stretch goal writers, assuming we hit the last goal, which we're pretty close, that's 14 additional Titans on top of what I'm designing that are going to go into the book from a whole bunch of really interesting people. We've mentioned L5R several times. Katrina Ostrander, who's was past tense lead story designer for 5th edition L5R, she's writing a Titan for the game, as well as a whole bunch of other really, really cool people. So yeah, it's really good. So the best thing I say, going over to the Kickstarter, if this sounds like something that you're interested in supporting, you know, I am not Hasbro, I am not Wizards of the Coast, I don't have millions of dollars in the game. The only way that this game exists, the only way that indie games exist, are if people support projects like this. So again, if this is something that you're interested in, I would very much appreciate, everyone, the community would appreciate coming in and supporting the project while it's up on Kickstarter.
Beautiful, Jim. Our community sure will love Reach of Titan. I see a couple of people already asking for the link in between our conversation. So hopefully that will reach more people, more Portuguese people, and they will buy it and see it in the future. Maybe even the document of playtesting in the near future, monthly RPG meetups that we have here in Portugal, both in the north and in the middle. I think South have already, yeah, they have monthly meetups, although I'm not from the South. Anyway, guys, do you have Bruno, Joaquim, or even Jim? Do you have anything to add to this beautiful and rather awesome conversation?
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Jim, for this awesome conversation.
Yeah.
You are a very, very pleasing guy to talk.
Indeed.
And you can rumble all about it wherever you need to talk with us. We are open arms.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jim.
Yes, Jeff, thank you very much. It's a very good project. I really liked it. And I think it's going to spread its wings and soar high. Right now it's on Kickstarter, but the buzz is already out. There's a lot of people already interested, and so are we. And we will be keeping in touch.
Absolutely, and thank you all so much for having me. It was an absolutely wonderful chat and fantastic questions. So I thank you so much for inviting me to come on the show and talk about it. And anytime you want me to come back on and ramble about anything, if you can't tell, I can talk for 2 hours about anything. So
no, it's awesome.
Be happy to come on any other time.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Bruno. Thank you, Joaquim, for being here with me. Guys, thank you there for watching us, both on Twitch stream and YouTube video. If you have any questions, you can type in as a comment on YouTube, or find us at our Facebook page, at our Discord, at our Patreon. Every link is will be on the description. Also, the Kickstarter link will be on the description, but be fast. 4 days to go, 4 days to get this beautiful juice of a project. But hopefully, if you don't manage to acquire it in 4 days, it will be on the Third Act publishing stores for sure. Or you can even email Jim and ask where you can find them. So guys, thank you so much. Let's blow a kiss to our beautiful viewers, and see you next Sunday for another Rola of Diplomacy. But tomorrow you'll have me at Monster Mondays. See you guys. Thank you. Ciao, ciao.
The ground shakes under our feet. The sky darkens as it approaches. Grab your steel, make peace with your soul, because destiny itself approaches. We are in the presence of a titan. Welcome to Reach of Titan, a new tabletop role-playing game from Third Act Publishing. Reach of Titan is a game about fighting larger-than-life creatures. Players take on the role of Titan Hunters, the protectors of their village that must go out and defend their people from the giants of the world. This game is 1 part Shadow of the Colossus, 1 part Monster Hunter, and a sprinkle of Attack on Titan on top. We've spent the last 3 years working on this project and are so happy to finally be publishing this game. Please check out the Kickstarter page below for all the details. However, there is still one thing needed to make it a reality. You. We need backers like you to support Reach of Titan in order to make this project a success. If this sounds like the kind of game that you're into, please lend your support here and now. Without you, this one...
And so this was the one more episode of Rola Diplomacia. Tonight we had Jim McClure, where you can find his new RPG game Reach of Titan in the Kickstarter. Go get it, or you might lose a awesome experience. See you in the next Sunday, guys. Thank you for being there. Kisses.